My name is Theo Wilhelm. I'm a longtime classroom teacher who has retired from the classroom after 27 years, more or less, and have jumped into politics. I'm currently running for school board and have the Deschutes Democrats endorsement for the position. All right, that's a really great question. I think it's perhaps the most vital role is ensuring that the major stakeholders of public education, which are the citizens in the community, are the ones essentially in charge. Of course, we can't have every citizen show up to the boardroom, so they elect school board officials to execute a lot of things, but first and foremost represent their interests and needs. So I think it's perhaps the most vital role of the school board is making sure that they're responding to the logical and reasonable demands of the community. Well, that's a great question. I think it's really going to have to take willingness to, and I reckon we'll probably talk about this later, making sure that all voices are being heard. And school districts often like to make opportunities for people to engage with the board by coming to board meetings or watching their meetings on YouTube. Uh, but the reality is the people that are most marginalized and that we're probably not hearing from are the last ones that have the time to sit around and watch a YouTube video for an hour. They're probably working two jobs or raising kids all by themselves or show up for a public comment at the board meeting. So I think it's really important that the people with the most money and influence are going to be knocking at the door. But I think as a school board, to continue that metaphor, we actually gotta like leave the house, go past the door and reach out to people. Don't just invite them in, but try to meet them where they're at so we can hear their voices and make sure they're included. I wish I had the magic answer right now. I'm going to learn a lot. I'm going to be cocky when elected to the board. Um, uh, but I think an invitation to participate isn't enough, as I mentioned before. You need to show up in those communities. You need to be empowering school boards, PTO organizations to reach out to their communities aggressively, find reasons to bring the community into that school, whether it's social event, professional events, and make sure that we are not saying, hey, we're interested in what you have to say, come on and come talk to us, but instead really reaching out to them, meeting them where they're at, those marginalized communities, because that's the marginalized. They're on the outskirts, and when you invite them in, that's just more the same as compared to meeting them where they're at. So I think that's going to take some creativity of how you, at each school building, have individual, PTO or PTA working together with the community at large. Here's an example. A lot of PTO meetings happen during the workday. So that immediately
Yeah.
eliminates people who have to really get out there and do everything they have to support their families with, two jobs or whatever it is. So things like that. We need to not just open the door and say, come on in. We need to go out and meet them where they're at. So that will take some creativity. I look forward to learning how I'm going to do that or encourage that, but I certainly have no shortage of ideas. I think there's some basic things that have to happen, and I do want to. I think this is important. I've also taught internationally. I taught on 4 other continents,
Wow.
and so I've taught at international schools where the student body was represented by over 60 countries. Um, when it talks to about making sure all cultures are represented, I love it. I love the idea, and I think the first thing we need to do is start letting the cultures that we have here existing in Bend see themselves in our schools, not only in the curriculum, but in the things we celebrate on our school walls and the languages we use. If it's a Latino community, then primarily put it in Spanish with some little letters in English. Make it seem like they are our priorities. So I think they need to see themselves in schools as much as possible. And I also, as I said, want to continue with that outreach. I'm also a journalist. I would really like to use my writing skills to reach out through local publications that hopefully maybe people will pick up and be able to make sure all families are always aware of what's going on, what we're working on, and how they can get involved. And that should be printed in multiple languages to represent our entire community. I think, I don't think you can necessarily say that one of them wins the day. So if local families and teachers have a very vocalized concern, we need to listen to it and also pit it against what the experts are saying. And if the experts have ideas, we have to consider the experience of the families. So I think that's the real hard job of being on the school board. And I think my experience is sometimes school boards end up with blinders on and turn only to the expert advice. And I've seen time and time again where the expert advice didn't truly turn out to be that expert. I've also benefit from expert advice. So I don't think we can really only lean on that side. Likewise, experience of local families, here's something that is very true. Everybody has a strong opinion on how schools should be run because we've all been through school.
Yes.
But it doesn't matter what you do with your living for a living or as a vocation, you're pretty sure you got some great ideas about school. Well, I don't know. I'm going to make sure that, I value those opinions, but you have to temper them because there
Yes.
are experts in the schools.
Yes.
It's a lot of rigor getting your degrees and whatnot. So I think it's a balance of listening to everybody, not getting caught up in the passion of local families because they can really get upset about a particular issue, but making sure that you're listening equitably to everybody and then seeing what you have at the end of the day on the table based on local concerns, teacher concerns, and expert advice. So I think you have to entertain all three to make sure that you're doing what's best for all students and families. I think uh, I think humbling myself. I'm not running just for school board so I can climb some political ladder. As a matter of fact, I've felt like this isn't worth it more than once. I think just really humbling myself and realizing that I won't really know what the community needs unless I'm out there in the community. And that doesn't mean just doing a school visit where everybody knows the school board's coming and they put on a dog and pony show. I mean, getting out to community events and talking to people, letting them know I'm a school board member, asking for their opinions, getting out to those sort of events that are outside my comfort zone or maybe that I normally don't have interest in, which been doing more of lately. So my plan is to not get elected to some room where we shut the door and invite you in. And to be fair, our school board members do a good job of getting out in the community. I just think they can't match my energy. I only told you half of them.
Okay.
So, and I will admit, some people get really jazzed up about technology. I'm not that guy, So, I do have my own lens, but I am concerned about um, technology, but that's being said a lot. Another thing I'm really concerned about is the student and teacher sense of safety, belonging, respect. So in the Youth Truth Survey and the survey with the Bend-Lapine staff, the results were really, really shockingly and concerning about how many kids feel like they have relationships at school, if they feel safe at school, how many teachers would invite their, other teachers, recommend the district to them. You can see there's just a real sense of malcontent in both parties. And so I think we need to do a better job of assuring better conduct from students and even probably staff in some regards. Not to put down the staff, but I just don't want to pick on kids. But I think we need to reestablish that community. There's always going to be kids who are not going to be in love with school. And I didn't really love school, but I didn't mind being at school with my buddies and celebrating and having a good time and feeling safe. And I want to bring that back. I really think that's a concern. Absenteeism is a big deal. Student conduct is a big deal. Well, I don't know. Maybe we should take that as an indication that we can do better in making kids want to come to school and feel safe. Yeah. And I have to be realistic. I'm such an idealist that the board has its way of its mechanisms of how it works, and I'm so fired up. I want to go in there and change things right away. Well, there's seven of us, and in reality, the school board just governs, and the superintendent executes what we suggest.
Right.
So I think success for me then would be to encourage both the board and the superintendent to start asking better questions. I know that sounds really simple, but start really digging deeper into the reality of what is going on in our schools. And I think if I can get them to do that, they'll see a lot, namely when it comes to historically underserved students. There's only I, I I I think there's a lot at stake in the sense that not voting some new blood onto the school board is a referendum suggesting that they're doing things just fine. When, yes, there are some little improvements and we've seen some growth here and there, but the results are still really troubling. So I think, you're basically telling the board we're happy with how things are going if you just vote the same people right back on, because I'm running against an incumbent.
Mm.
So I think, and the fact of the matter is too, is we need some new thinking, some new ideas about schools, because look at where we are. Ben likes to point out that they're one of the most successful districts in Oregon, but they don't point out that Oregon is one of the worst states in the country. So we're the best of the worst. Like
Not a flex.
there's an unwillingness to suggest that maybe things could be done a little bit differently. I know it's hard. I know I'm entering into a system I'm unfamiliar with, and I'm going to have to learn along the way and maybe cool my jets a little bit along the way. But I don't think we can tell the board, hey, you're doing a great job, just keep doing what you're doing. I I'm just going to share my experience, and you decide if it should be changed.
Okay, okay.
um, Prior to my joining this campaign, it really was an overnight decision. I was like, I got to stop grumbling and get to work, and I've got the skills, the ability, and the willingness to do so. Uh, five of the so there are five positions up this year. Normally it would only be four, but someone had to get appointed in December of last year, so there's five positions up for election. Four of them are incumbents. I'm running against one of them, and then there's also a position open that a woman is running for. Well, prior to the endorsement process from the Democrats, they came out as a slate and said, we're kind of running as one. The five of us like working together so much
Oh.
that we want to present as a slate. So I came along and won the endorsement from the guy who was appointed in December, and they all refused the Democratic endorsement so they could stay as a slate, because they would have had to cheer for me
Oh
if
my.
if and so the five of them have joined forces. Three of them don't even have an opponent in this race, so they can ask the people that support them to put money towards my opponent. I've seen the email that went out asking. The other two board members, one of them has been quite vocal in suggesting I'm not ready for the position, so she's campaigning for my opponent as well. The seventh one hasn't said anything, so I don't want to throw her under the bus. But so one of the candidates who's not even up for election this cycle is raising money for my opponent. So essentially, at the end of the day, it's I'll say six versus one, but I think it's even seven. A future generation, I'd like to apologize on behalf of the previous generations that find you in some weird situations. But at the same time, I know you're resilient, I know you're innovative, and that's why I love education, because I believe in the future. So go out there and crush it. We need you.